In this video, we will take a look at the WNBA. It's about a week since they've returned, and I thought we'd take a look at where things stand currently. Yes, of course, we will cover the Fever and Caitlin Clark. If you have a YouTube channel, you are contractually obligated to mention Caitlin Clark to get views. So I will do that as well. We'll take a look at the Phoenix Mercury and the disaster that's looming in Dallas. In addition, I just finished watching Minnesota give a butt whooping to the Las Vegas Aces. I'll talk about that and preview the game. Can they back it up at home tonight? The other one, the Chicago Sky. Are they like cockroaches that won't die once we count them out? Are they going to rear their non-death traits and take out the sun tonight or not? So we will get all into it. Before we start, if you like the content, then please consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like. All right, let's get into this. Oh, as well, the video, the editing will be a bit rough as I just want to get this video up. So like I said, the first thing I want to talk about is Caitlin Clark. And yes, this will endure me to YouTube fans everywhere or people that watch my channel. I think people more enjoy when I am wrong. Those videos get the best views when I come out and say, yeah, I was wrong that Nika Mule was going to be traded, or going to be cut from the Seattle Storm. But this is one that I feel I got right. When they went into the break, I said, look out, WNBA. This is going to give Caitlin Clark a chance to refresh her legs, resettle, and come back with a vengeance after the Olympics. And it appears that is happening. As first two games, she has put up big numbers, going for 29 versus the Mercury in a win, and then following that up by 23 versus the Seattle Storm. And you can tell that she is feeling good about her game and her team. Just from the press conference, I noted so far in her WNBA career, she has not taken a misstep in the press conferences, always saying the right things. But after the Storm game, she had to go out there and go a little bit petulant, thanking the ref for the technical that got her fired up and playing well. So she'd like to thank the ref, and that is classic Caitlin Clark when she is going well, and that is what irritates her to many, is she can sort of be that way. I think the other big win for Caitlin Clark is the Olympic campaign for Team USA. I think it was good for her that they were able to get the win over the French, because if they would have lost, some of the narrative would have been the whole Caitlin Clark thing was a distraction, and that really distracted the team, and America wasn't behind us, and that really hurt the team, and ... You can just see that whole narrative going, but they got the win, but at the same time, they struggled, and they were lucky to get that win over the French team. I would suggest that is the last time that Caitlin Clark will not be on the Olympic team. Now, the other side of that is Diana Taurasi, who did make the Olympic team and is playing for the Phoenix Mercury, and that was who the Fever's first victory was over. Admittedly, the Fever played the night before, so they were on a back-to-back, and they just took it. But if you look at Diana Taurasi, she did not have a good game in her last outing versus Atlanta, and I just wonder if it's the back half of the season, and this is going to be a struggle for her. And I don't begrudge her going to the Olympics, because that's one of the main goals. She was able to set the record for as many Olympics attended ever. I can't remember how many it is for her. But anyway, it's a personal accomplishment, and you can do what you want. But your legs only have so much life in them during a season. And that was extra games, extra travel, extra practices, and all that is cumulative. And you can't help but think, if at this stage in her career, 2 weeks off doing nothing would have been more advantageous for the Phoenix Mercury versus having an Olympic campaign. And the Olympics was not kind to the Phoenix Mercury, as they also lost Rebecca Allen. She tore her hamstring prior to the Olympics even starting, and she is still out. And with Rebecca Allen, she never comes back fast from injuries. Will she be back tonight? We don't know. But that's a big injury, because Allen is long and helps their defense and really fits into Nate Tibbetts' system. One other thing to look at Phoenix, they have the third hardest strength of schedule going into the end of the season, and their games are just brutal if you look at them. They've got New York, the Sun, the Lynx. They play the Storm twice, the Aces, Atlanta twice, and Atlanta's starting to look good. Chicago once, LA, and then Washington. So the real gimmies on paper are obviously LA and Washington. All those other games, including Chicago, I know they got them, but Those are all tough games, and it is going to be a tough stretch going back down. I don't think they'll miss the playoffs because they've got a 5-game lead, I believe. Yeah, it is a 5-game lead over Atlanta, who they play tonight. So that will be a big game. I wonder if this video will hold up or not. They'll probably come out and have a crashing game against Atlanta, and then I'll have to eat my words. But yes, just keep an eye on the Mercury, and let's see what happens to them. Now, another team that I want to take a look at is the Seattle Storm. They had a rough start, so they had the opening loss when they came back to the Fever, and then they went and lost another one to Atlanta as well. They got their must-win over Washington to stop the bleeding. But the thing with the Storm are good, but the question is, will they be killed by their three-point shooting? As Diggin Smith has just lost her three-point shot. She is currently shooting 25% from three-point range. Since they've returned, she's only shooting 16%. A small sample, only 3 games, but she's gone 2 for 12 from three-point range. For her career, she is a 31% three-point shooter, but the previous 2 years, in her time in Phoenix, she shot 39% from 3, then 37% from 3, and then her final season before going on maternity leave, her shot slumped and she was down to 29%. And since then, she hasn't been able to hit three-pointers at the consistent rate that she was doing before that. But to go along with that problem, Jewell Loyd can't hit her threes either. She's always been over 30% from 3 during her career, except for her rookie year. And she's at 25%. She's gone 4 for 18 and at 22% in the last 3 games since they returned from the Olympics. And in my mind, this is a little bit of bad news, good news type situation because they're not shooting their threes very well, but they are still competitive in winning games and are sitting number 4 in the standings. And this is because their defense is nasty, especially on the inside with Nneka Ogwumike and Izzy Magdebor. That size, they can switch. And then Jewell Loyd is big as well. And Diggin Smith, they can all play. So if they get their shots going, this team will be nasty in the playoffs. That's the big question. Can they get their shot back? In a lot of ways, I find that the Minnesota Lynx are a lot like the Seattle Storm, except the Lynx have shooters, and when the Lynx are hitting their shots, they are the best team in the WNBA. That's the question. If they're not hitting their shots, then they struggle a little bit because they don't have that presence inside as much, and their defense is actually better than the Storm. So Minnesota, their opponent's effective field goal shooting percentage prior to the break, they held opponents to 44.9% effective field goal shooting percentage. The Storm were just behind at 46.3%. Those were the best 2 in the league. New York was third with 47.5%. And that's the problem with the Aces right now. The Aces just are not the same defensive team as they are going. They're holding opponents to 48% field goal shooting percentage, and they've always been up the top. They switch and make it nasty on teams. But during the game versus the Lynx, they went to Hammond on one of the timeouts, or where they talked to the coach during the interview, and she's like, I can't design an offense to cover how bad our defense is. And some of that was Minnesota was hot, and that's the question. Did they just have a hot shooting night? I mean, Courtney Williams just couldn't miss and everything she hit. But at the same time, they were still the Aces were going under screens on her, letting her get her mid-range jumper, and there were back cuts on them, and just bad communication from the Aces. Like, they gave them too many easy buckets at the rim. But the other question, the big thing with Minnesota is the trade that they made with the Washington Mystics. They gave up their backup point guard. I can't remember what her name is. She's small and fast, a foreign player. And they got Misha Hines-Allen. And that was a big pickup, as Hines-Allen is a good, strong forward that can fill in. And in the game against the Aces, Alana Smith, she was struggling with foul trouble from the very beginning. Like, some of the fouls were ticky-tack, but either way, and that was the nice elixir for them, is they could just go and bring in Hines-Allen, and she filled in great, and it looked like she was just a great fit for that team, and it just gives them a bit of insurance on their kryptonite, which was Alana Smith getting in foul trouble. The other quick note on Minnesota, Bridget Carlson is now in the starting lineup. Cheryl Miller had tried to put Diamond Miller back as the starter, but she switched it up and gone back to Bridget Carlson, and I think that's a good move. Carlson just gives them more on offense, It's interesting with Diamond Miller. She needs to start to develop it. She's that second year player. I know she had the knee injury early on, and hopefully she builds. But between the two, they are currently getting a lot more from Bridget Carlson than they are from Diamond Miller. I think Diamond Miller will be useful in matchups, especially on Jackie Young potentially, although she didn't get much time versus the Aces. I think she was limited to about 3 or 4 minutes because Miller went big with Hines Allen and Dorka at one point. And that was the lineup that she felt more comfortable with when Alana Smith got in foul trouble. Now the disaster in Dallas. So Dallas is tied for the last record at 6-22. They had a big first up game versus the Sun, and they could not get it done at home, and that was a bad loss because then they were going to face the New York Liberty back to back, and they went down to those. So they've come back and gone 0-3 despite having Satu Sabali back. And this is a case of where they're just going to run out of games because they are 5 back with 12 to play. So that's a lot of games to make up. And their schedule is brutal as well, as they have the Liberty twice, the Lynx once, the Storm once, the Aces twice. Then they've got Sparks and Washington. Those are easy beats. But then Atlanta, Chicago, and the Fever twice. So there are no easy games on there to try to make up 5 games in that amount of time with 12 left. That is going to be a very tough ask for them. And my question is, will Latricia Trammell, will she pay the ultimate price for the team that Greg Bibb put together? Basically, Bibb put together a team with no point guard, and they are paying for it. And as well, I could see him firing her. That's what he does. She was brought in as a defensive coach, and they have one of the worst defenses in the league. At the Olympic break, teams were shooting an effective field goal percentage against them 52.5%. That is the worst in the league. And you can make excuses with injuries, which of course they lost Satu Sabali and Natasha Howard for a period of time. But I think she might wind up paying the ultimate price, and I don't know what Dallas does. I mean, first off, you are not going to have a good defensive team as long as you have Arike Ogumawale on your team. It's just that simple, and your life of your team is just up and down, determines how, if she is hot on a given night and she just gets that way, then you're going to win. But if she is cold, then your team is doomed, and that is what their problem is. And they're on the hook for her for max contract until 2025 as well. They've got Tiara McCowan on $200K until in 25 as well. And McCowan just doesn't give them enough on offense to justify what she does on defense, which is teams get her and pick and roll, and they pick her apart. And if she's going to be on the court, she has to brutalize teams down low with rebounds and scoring, and she just does not do that. And then they brought in Kalani Brown as well. That's sort of like a mirror of her. And she's signed till 2026, so they don't have a different look. And then Natasha Howard, this is her last year under contract. So she's an unrestricted free agent. She can't be cored. And it's like, what would you bring Natasha Howard back? So that they really are a mess. And then the other thing, they need to keep money free because Satu Sabali is a free agent. But then again, with Satu Sabali, she has only had one healthy year, which was last year, her breakthrough year, where she played 38 games. In her other years, she's played 16, 17 games, 11 games. So she always has an injury. And that would be the question. Do you really want to give Sabali $200K plus? Is it worth the investment? And you could justify that to yourself, but you just might get a player that won't play very much. And if Dallas isn't willing to pay that, I'm sure other teams will line up and pay that for her. Like I have no doubt Chicago would have interest in her if Dallas decides not to. So the interesting part is Dallas is not catching Washington and Los Angeles in the tank wars. So currently Los Angeles is in front of Washington in the tank wars, but Chicago might fall into the lottery because Atlanta is starting to play well with Jordan Canada back. In addition, Ryan Howard's healthy. They've won their first 3 games. They are on a heater. It'll be interesting tonight if they're able to get the win over Phoenix, and they are on their way. And then Chicago plays the Sun tonight, and Chicago could almost be in the lottery, by the end of play tonight. I don't know what the tiebreakers are, but effectively they would have the same records. Chicago would be 11-17, and Atlanta would be 11-17, and would be tied for that lottery spot. And if Chicago falls into the lottery and Atlanta keeps on playing better, Dallas has the swap rights with Chicago's pick. So even though Dallas cannot move up in the lottery, if Chicago falls into the lottery, and let's say they are 3-4, then they will have the second best odds whoever falls second. So currently, LA has the best odds at 44.2%. Then it's Washington at 27.6%. But if Dallas is currently number 3, it's 17.8% chance of getting that number 1 pick. If Chicago fell in there, they would have a 10.4% chance. So effectively, Dallas would have a 28.2% chance at the number 1 pick, which would be ahead of Washington, who has a 27.6% chance of the number 1 pick. And by the way, Atlanta has no reason to tank because Washington holds their pick. So Washington is very much incentivized, much like the Chicago Sky, to stay out of the lottery because of the pick swap in place with Dallas. Well, that's the same thing with the Atlanta Dream, as Washington owns their pick, so no way they want to be in the lottery. If Dallas wound up with the number 1 pick and were in position to draft Paige Bueckers, I wonder what Paige Bueckers would do. She's previously said that, nah, the team location doesn't matter. I'm going anywhere and we'll make it happen. But man, Dallas and playing for teams that Greg Bibb puts together would not be ideal. I don't know if Kathy Engelbert if she could do the old David Stern and put cold envelope. I know they don't do envelopes anymore. You know, the whole Patrick Ewing thing with the bent envelope, or it was put in the freezer. But the WNBA has to prevent Paige Bueckers from going to Dallas, having her play alongside Arike Ogunbowale, one of the most unselfish players in Paige Bueckers, next to Arike Ogunbowale, who's never seen a shot she hasn't liked. Oh my God, it would hurt my eyes to watch that and watch Paige Bueckers be having to play side by side with Arike. Oh. Maybe the commissioner would intervene and say, no, I know Dallas got the number 1 pick, but no, she's going to the LA Sparks. I will not have this on my watch. We cannot have Paige Bueckers going to the Dallas Wings and being put on a team formulated by Greg Bibb. Lastly, I am probably counting my chickens before they hatch, saying that the Chicago Sky are going to fall into the lottery, as they are like a cockroach you can't kill or a snake you can't kill. When you think they're dead, they rear their ugly head and play nasty and have a game out of nowhere and win. It's ugly basketball for all money. It looks like they don't have enough offense to win games, but every time I count out the Sky, they always come back and win. So I am not doing it. This time I'm going to be cautious and would not be surprised if they get an upset win over the Sun tonight. Now, I'm going to post this video in a few minutes, so I'll probably look like a fool when this video ends, but that's fine. I'd rather bet on the Sky to win than bet against them, because it always seems like when I bet against them, they get me. All right, anyway, your thoughts, your comments. Again, the editing will be poor on this one. I apologize. I just wanted to get it up. I meant to do it last night, but ran out of time. All right, thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.